you go. All right, so I'm going to introduce you guys to Jeff LaRue here. Today we're going to have a conversation about novation. We'll just have a general conversation, some Q&A, and how I think adding it to your business will give you the ability to get, 3, 4, 5 deals a month done on autopilot, right? And so, Jeff, tell me a little bit about your background in regards to prior to doing anything that had to do with novations. What were you involved in before that?
Yeah, definitely. My background, let's see, a while back for about 10 years, I was a general contractor. So I built custom homes and did, as far as construction on that end.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my background. Got introduced to the investment side. So I've been on the investment side for about 15 years, in all, aspects of it, from just conventional real estate and I really probably the last 10 years more focused on the off market.
Okay.
So doing a lot of creative deals, so seller finance, a lot of wholesales. If it was local in my area, it was a lot of buy and hold.
Yeah.
So I'm old school. I like rentals, and
Yeah.
so I like cash flow in that sense. And so that was kind of my experience prior to up till about 3 years ago when I started doing more as on the novation side.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And all that is done locally there in the Washington area that you're in now?
So yeah, I'm located in Eastern Washington, Spokane, Washington. So I started locally, yes, and
Okay.
probably about I don't know, probably about 3 years ago, we were kind of a hidden gem, and then we kind of hit the map as far as kind of on the investment side. So I mean, if you were to Google, wholesale in the U.S., Spokane would come up on the top 10 a lot. So prices really increased, the demand was increasing, so it's kind of plateaued right now. So with that came a lot of extra competition. So not only
Okay.
local, but outside the market. So, you were competing against
Okay.
the guy across town, but you were competing a guy in Houston, in Columbia, in Tallahassee, wherever. So it was getting a lot of, which was great. So, but on the end for us, it was like, okay, why am I just battling and rubbing nickels together here in Spokane when I can take what I'm doing, scale it, and go nationwide? So I'm
Yeah.
not really, my company and my business is not dictated on the local market in my area. So if
So
it's hot, I pick up deals, great. If
yeah.
it's not, there's plenty of deals out there.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. So you went from physical in-house, probably sitting in the living room with people doing deals to the point where now you started doing more virtual wholesaling, right? And so have you always, I mean, as your primary deal source, has it always been, and I know you're doing some now that you're doing virtual, started going virtual, you started doing some creative as well. Were you where did you learn the creative aspect of wholesaling from?
As far as like seller finance.
Yeah, correct.
Old school. I mean, I'll date myself, but the old Carlton Sheets, he's
Okay.
been around for decades. I mean, he's stuff that like our parents heard about. But then,
Yeah.
obviously the resurgence of like, with like a Pace Morby, stuff like that really brought it
Okay.
to the surface and made it easy to teach and be part of and be
Yeah.
mentored by, a large community
Yeah.
to know a lot of the creative deal. Cause it's like, for
Yeah.
me, it's like, you're doing the marketing, you're on the phone, you're talking to people. If you can provide as many options as you can to be
Yeah.
able to get some money out of that deal, the better it
Yeah.
is. I mean, if you're going to be that one trick pony and the cash guy, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
I love it because I just come up right behind you and scoop them up just because I can offer something. I can offer something that you can't. I mean, let's be honest. And so
Yeah.
it's like the more you can educate yourself on other exit strategies, the more
Yeah.
successful you're going to be.
That's interesting. That's absolutely interesting because I know there was a time where I only did direct to seller when I first started out, right? And then I started to do some micro flipping after that, right? And then a little bit of creative. And then I started realizing, wait, hold up. Now on my direct to seller deals, I can offer sellers a lot more options, right? And so
Yep.
for me, that was a tremendous value. Something else is interesting is today is the first time ever that I've heard the name Carlton Sheets twice in one day. Earlier today, I was listening to a Jamil Damji and Tony the Closer interview, and they were talking about Carlton. His dad instead of listening to music in the car, they used to listen to Carlton Sheets. So that's pretty
I
interesting.
I have it on. It's somewhere, but it's like literally have the book of DVDs or
Yeah,
CDs that you would
yeah,
listen to. It's like
yeah. No, that's super cool. That's super cool. So when it comes to um the types of when you rolled out and you start doing wholesaling, were you doing even though you were virtually in other markets, was it direct to seller only deals that you started doing?
no, no. So obviously, because people are like, well, how do you market nationwide? And it's like there are target markets that I like, and I'll do some
Yeah.
marketing in those areas, whatnot. But for me, it was um, I was really focusing on helping other people do what I do. And
Okay.
so people would be bringing deals across the board saying, "Hey, I got this deal like that's in, Albuquerque, New Mexico." And I'll be like, "Well, for example, I just got one signed today in Matador, Texas. Have no idea. It's kind of, just west of Dallas or whatever, but I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So it's going to be, obviously a novation deal. We can go to that later. But so people were bringing me deals because it was in a lot of times when you're working, say if I'm working my Spokane market and then I got a deal in um, you know, Roanoke, Virginia. It's like people would
Yeah.
be like, they're like, "Oh, I'm not interested in selling my house here in Spokane, but I just inherited a property in Virginia. Would you be interested in that?"
Oh, yeah.
Most guys are
Yeah.
like, "No," because they don't have the resources, the
Yeah.
know-how, whatever it is. So, but it's a great opportunity. So for me, I saw value in that. And so I just started kind of marketing myself and networking and letting people know, hey, if you get out of market deals or ones that you're unfamiliar with, send them my way and let's put a deal together.
I
So I
think
started
that's
doing
I think that's great because you've been able to build out this enormous network of people across the country that you've been able to help out, and that you're able to get deals done with, right?
yeah, it's been great. It's been great. It's just kind of exploding. It's like, it's like it people all the time as far as kind of, where I can help them out. And I see
Yeah.
opportunity everywhere. It's like, if it's whether it's a big market, mid market, or like a rural area. I mean, the last deal I did was in a town of 400. And, was it a home run? No, but after I paid out all the fees, the seller got double what he was going to get a cash offer for. And I walked away with like 12 grand. So, and we closed it in 11 days. So
Okay, so
it's
now
like
that is important, right?
that's important because
Because
it's
I
like a
think,
lot of the stuff people get scared. And here's the thing,
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
those are sometimes even better deals because those people really want to sell and
yeah,
they're pretty much gonna give it away. Or and not only that, but it's like there's not a lot of people marketing or there's not competition at all. It's like, I mean, there's nobody out there, but you got to have a good exit strategy because think about it. If you're buying in the town 400, who's and you're doing like a cash wholesale deal, it's like, you got to have the means to be able to sell that deal. So how can you do that easily? And that's where you can kind of struggle on the wholesale side. Could you put it to, one of the bigger platforms like, Deal Speed or Investor Lift or one of those? It's like, yeah, so you can have a connection or, you can pay it, which some of the, Investor Lift's pricey. And it's like, even then, when you're on those platforms, do you have buyers in those remote areas of Texas, remote areas of
yeah,
Eastern
probably
Washington?
not, probably
So
not,
for
yeah.
me, that's where I kind of evolved and kind of started going with my newer method.
So that's good. So, so now let's kind of get into, I think, the meat and potatoes of the conversation, which is all things novation, right? And I think um, some of the misnomers about doing novations, right? Let me ask you a couple of things. What is so obviously direct to seller deals that buyers want more uh than investment can offer cash for is a great option for novations, right? Are
Oh,
there are and that's I would imagine that's the sweet spot, right?
yep, yep. Because for me, it was like, when you're wholesaling, I mean, everybody can sit there and go through. I mean, you probably think of leads in your system that are like, you have your cash offer, and then you got the people that want to sell retail. And then it's like you got, say, 10%, 10%, but then you got like this 80% in the middle of like, okay, well, they don't want to, cash offer's not going to work. They don't want to sell retail. What do we do with these
Excuse
leads?
me.
And, for a while
Yeah.
I struggled. I was like, gosh, what? what do we do with these? Well, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, it just timing allowed, and I kind of hooked up with the right people and watched this random podcast and was like, "That's it. I'm going to learn
Mm,
how to do that." And so
yeah.
I pretty much started. Obviously, I drive. I go cash first, cash first, cash first, and then But as I'm having those conversations with the seller, you could check off like, okay, he wants to cash out. He's not open to term seller finance, so we're not going to go down. But he's not in a hurry. He can allow a little bit more time. He wants more than cash. It's starting to check the novation box. So then I'm going to lean that conversation for there.
So is there, I would imagine you have some worksheet where that you punch in the numbers in and to figure out whether it's a innovation, whether an innovation will actually work with that specific transaction. Is that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
your process of going through?
yeah.
And
So I have a
then does it?
calculator that I run all my numbers through, and I basically just
Okay.
punch in the same, like the ARV estimated,
Yeah.
rehab costs. I have my profit margins set. I can adjust those if the numbers are close, but I have them set to that, and it'll spit out. It'll show here's your cash offer, here's your novation offer, and so I
Okay.
already know
So
what it is. It factors that all in there.
so for people who don't know, we talked about where the sweet spot is for novations, right? Which is primarily a scenario where the seller wants cash for it and it's higher than a wholesaler can make a cash offer for it and be able to so are there other areas is there an opportunity to do a deal for on a microflip deal? Can you do a novation on a microflip deal, or do you just need to be, is it only on deals where you have direct access to the seller?
No, there's a lot of options, and there's a lot of people that do novations differently, just like wholesale. There's a lot of people that do, wholesale, they'll do wholesale. So there's, for me, and scaling wise, I like to put minimal money in because I mean, if you're doing 10, 20 deals nationwide and you're putting in 10, 15 grand on each house,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
adds up. So a lot of the times I like to adjust my prices accordingly, taking that in consideration. I work with the agents on that. And so I
Okay.
let them
Okay.
know, that, hey, we're gonna, yes, we could throw on new paint and carpet and list it at 280, but we're gonna
Mhm.
list it at 239 and take that into consideration and allow that for a concession, say at closing, or let people know that, hey, we're aware that it needs new carpet, that way it's priced to sell. So that way
So
you can kind of scale it so you don't have to have money out of your pocket. But some people do novations and they'll do a $40,000 rehab before they sell on the market. And for me, I don't know, it's a lot of risk. Just
yeah,
think about
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
If
You
you
might
were to
as well
put
get
40
into
grand into a house, rehab it, then all of a sudden the seller's like, hey, my house looks great. I'm not selling. And then it's like your hands are tied. So that's just me, my personal opinion. I like to be able to simplify things, be able to make it scalable with not a lot of, as far as kind of equity, putting money into the deal.
okay, okay. So primarily, we talked about the sweet spot. We talked about there is some other creative ways, and you could do some other things. But for you, let's walk through that deal that 12K deal that you just finished. Um, what it what did that where was it at first of all? Um,
Yeah, so it was in Harrington, Washington. So I'm Eastern
oh, okay,
Washington, Spokane. So Harrington's
okay,
it's a little farming community about 40 minutes outside of town.
okay, okay. And then tell us a little bit about the specifics of the deal. So you acquired what I guess obviously you would was it some had you skip trace the list or somebody came to you and brought you the deal or how did you obtain the deal?
Yeah, it was actually a referral from a realtor. And so, I just kind of have that reputation in town that I like, just crazy deals up middle of nowhere, wherever it is. And they just send me
Yes.
referrals. And obviously, I compensate them on the back end. And
Okay.
but yeah, so I got a call from a guy and he was like, hey, I got your number from Eric. He said that you like POS houses out in the middle of nowhere. Well, I got one. I'm like, okay, great. So he kind of gave me the details and he was like, he's like, I owned it for the last 10 years. I've never been there. I've just bought it for tax purposes and I want to get rid of it. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
have you talked to anybody else? And he's like, yeah, I talked to a couple other guys, offer me like 10,000 bucks for it. And, I was like, okay. And I was looking at my numbers. I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I was like, well, what do you need to make? And he's like, well, honestly, I really want to make 20 grand. I'm like, okay, if I can get you 20 grand, do you care how I do it? And he's like, nope. I'm like, okay, as long as you can allow me a little bit more time and reasonable access to the property, we can make this happen. So that's kind of always my pitch. And then,
Yeah.
I provide them with the information as far as kind of on the program. Because the biggest thing on
Yeah.
Novation is you want everybody to be fully transparent and honest in the situation because there's a lot of moving parts. So if you don't know what you're doing, same thing on wholesale, then you could kind of miscommunicate, mislead,
Yeah.
confuse people, upset people.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you have all those ducks in a row to begin with. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. I was like, is there like a lockbox or neighbor have a key? He goes, no, I think it's open. So I'm like, great. So call my
Yeah. Yeah.
realtor
That's
buddy.
those are the best ones.
Yeah, call my realtor buddy and who's going to be listing it with me anyways. And we went and walked it. And, I about fell through the kitchen floor. It was like it was it needed work, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was a great location in this little town. And we looked at like comps and stuff like that. And there was a similar one that was selling that was had one more bedroom. It was like 99. And so I was like, okay, well, and I just really lean on my agents as far as kind of their expertise. And that makes it
Yeah.
easier, especially when you're doing virtual. You have to have agents are a
Yeah.
key as far as doing
Yeah.
that. So he was like,
Yeah.
hey, Jeff, he goes, let's list this at 59.9. And so I was like, all right, cool. So I had gotten the contract with the seller signed on Thursday. Friday, we went out there. Friday, we listed it, had a full price offer on Saturday. He wanted to come by. He was actually an investor an hour away in a small town called Ritzville. It's about in central Washington. He drove over, checked everything out, waived the inspection on Monday. We closed on Friday. And so, but I would have never found that guy if I didn't list it on the multiple listing service. Cause it was like, I
Yeah.
don't know anybody flipping homes out there. And I would have never
Yeah.
guessed some guy from Ritzville would have bought it. So on
Mhm.
the dispo end, the best dispo, platform in the US right now is the
It's
multiple listing
MLS.
service. I mean,
Yeah.
let's not kid ourselves. And that way you're exposing it because obviously you're getting a contract at a little bit of higher price. So maybe it's going to be, the people that buy in those rural towns, maybe it's the dad who's buying for the kids that's moving back to town. It's like, it's not going to be maybe that fix and flipper. It's going to be somewhere
Yeah.
that guy in the middle, right where you captured that, that contract.
That's
You know,
great because yeah, that's great because that what you like I want to just kind of recap a little bit of that. One of the things I think that's super important is utilizing the MLS to sell the deals, right? And a
yes.
lot of people don't look at it like initially we used to just refer ours to agents and then we would split commission. But I like this method. I like the novation method. Well, this novation method of doing it because no out of money, not no out of pocket money, right? And you got buy off and transparency with the seller, and then you have an agent that can utilize his resources to blast it out to get all of the other agents in the area to bring their clients in, right? And so for me, I think that is a real good key in regards to that, right? I think that's super, super important in regards to that.
Oh, huge, huge. And as I talk to people like, across the nation, they're like, they'll struggling because they're using like brokerlist.com. They're like, why don't you use like a flat fee listing? And I'm like, okay, well, here's what's going to happen when you list on brokerlist.com, every phone call is going to come to you. Do you want to field those phone calls? I was like, honestly, I'll pay that 3%, 6% total commission because it's factored into my
Yeah,
calculator. And they
yeah,
treat me like I'm the seller. And I am because I'm signing on the seller's behalf. So it's like
yeah,
I get that full service. I get the drone pictures, I get the open
yeah,
houses, I get
yeah,
everything that anybody else would get, and I have no
yeah,
problem paying for it. So once I hand the ball off to those agents, I know that it's getting taken care of. And so
yeah,
sometimes it can be tricky finding those agents in those areas.
yeah.
There's a good referral network, but and I have a pretty good system of finding them. But sometimes,
Mhm.
people you have to educate those agents on what that is because some people are like, I mean, at the end of the day, innovation's been around forever. It's
Yeah,
just kind of
absolutely.
more resurfaced, probably the last like 3 to 5 years. So a lot of these
Mhm.
people, and even if you're looking at the licensing exam, there's a small section on Novation that they talk about.
Yep,
So it's
yep,
like they're educating agents on it, but a lot of people, it's like you got to find someone that's either an investor themselves, have done, creative deals, double close, novation, stuff like that. So they're familiar with it. So they're on your team and not against you, going to be questioning you. So
yeah,
yeah, again, that's key to find that because then you're going to get maximum exposure on the MLS. I mean, it's like
yeah.
I got a deal in Bruce, Mississippi, which is in the like nowhere. And it's like we listed, put on the market. And I was like looking at like the, views and saves, and it was like 800 views and like 70 saves. I'm like, man, that's more than my house here in Spokane gets.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I like that. I like the fact that you walk through kind of a case study because I think a lot of times with people who are trying to learn something and maybe pick up something new, one of the problems they have is there's no actual case studies of what a deal soup to nuts looks like. So I really appreciate you going through that. That was extremely helpful. One of the last things I want to ask you too is that um you're doing a lot of these deals in a lot rural. Do you just over time have built up great relationships with agents, obviously? So in each one of these markets, you have these great agents that are able to come and bring buyers for deals or list them and put them in places where buyers come for deals. Um, is there some standard like when someone's looking at an Novation deal that they should be looking at saying based on like if it's 100 grand property and like most people say it's let's say 100 and 200 grand is the ARV on it, right? Where
Mhm.
should someone be looking at in regards to how it fits? Should that just be within the conversation with the seller in regards to what the seller's looking for, or should it be some kind of standard percentage that always will fit within kind of that calculator you use?
Of it, when I put it through my kind of my calculator, it kind of factors in, okay, here's, the cash offer, here's what it's going to be. And then when it does an innovation offer, it factors in my, between 8 and 10% closing costs, because we're still paying for the closing costs. We're doing
Yep.
all that stuff, but
Yep.
we're also paying, the real estate commission. So it's factoring all that in there. And
Yeah.
so I kind of have an idea as far as kind of where I'm going to be. But
Yeah.
anytime they're above the cash offer, but below retail, there's a shot for innovation on that. And so then what I like to do too is I run my numbers and you kind of use whatever, if you're using prop stream, prop wire, whatever you're using to run your
Yeah.
comps. And then what I do is when I connect with my agent in that local market, I have them run their separate numbers. I don't tell them where I'm at. And I'm like, okay, here's the pictures. We're going to sell it.
Oh, and then you let them tell you where. So that makes sense. So you let them tell you where
I'm at
you're.
150 and they come
Yeah.
back and be like, hey, Jeff, honestly, we could probably sell this thing for like 170. I'm like, okay, I'm at 150. So why don't we go at, 159 and meet in the middle? And so
Yeah.
they'll be like, all right, cool, perfect. And then so I know I have a little bit of flexibility, but I got their expert local opinion based off
Yeah.
of my numbers too. And a lot of the
Yeah.
times,
Correct.
sometimes it could be way off. It's like, I was
Yeah.
looking at that one in like Matador, Texas, and there's nothing
Yeah.
sold in Matador in the last year. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
how can I find, how can I find as far as on those, um, finding comps. So it's finding that local agent to kind of give you, I mean, kind of get an idea, and
Yeah.
then you can get you get a better idea once you get that kind of local boots on the ground, agent to give you their, more based off of their, because they can pull up, their MLS and stuff like that, where I can't pull up MLS access, nationwide. That'd be kind of cool if you could, but I haven't
Yeah.
heard of a platform to do that yet.
Yeah. None of them. They all have to pull the local MLS. So I guess the
Yep.
last question would be, what are deals, in your opinion, that don't work out as Novation deals?
Yeah, no, that's a good question too. So, when you're talking to somebody, and I always talk about leading with cash, then I kind of
Yeah.
gear it towards innovation if it's not going to be the cash, or at the end of the day, it
Yeah.
might be just a listing. I mean, if it's a
Yeah.
turnkey house, it's like, why don't you list this property? It's like, honestly,
Yeah.
it's like, you're way off on the cash. You probably are maybe on the novation. So then it's like I pitch it to retail, send it, get a retail referral on that, and just kind of move on to.
Oh, okay.
So,
So you do get deals that you pitch to those same agents that are retail based deal, and then you guys do some kind of commission split or something?
yeah, yeah. So they usually pay me. I mean, industry standards about 25% of their referral fee, and so
Yeah.
a lot of the times, they just pay. We have paperwork signed, and they pay after closing as marketing. It's kind of for tax purposes. But the people that are kind of more by the book, and they're like, "Oh, are you an agent?" So if you're an agent, then they pay your company. One of my partners is a real estate agent, so we just run all those through him if that's the case. But I do, and that's when I'm approaching these agents. I'm saying, "Hey." here's how I can provide value to you. Not only are you going to list my novations, but I'm going to get some just regular retail ones. And I'm going to say, hey, call this guy. He wants a list. Here's what I expect in return. Also, I'm going to have, probably cash deals off market. And if you have investors, I'm still going to pay your commission on that. If you bring those. And then likewise, you can help me out. If you're at the local meetups, if you go to a listing appointment, hear someone that might fit in my buy box and I buy and close on it, I'll pay you commission as well. So it's kind of getting an extra set of eyes out there. So you're providing value to those agents like, man, it's kind of the whole, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back type thing. But
Yeah.
going back to when with the sellers, as far as kind of when it wouldn't be innovation, I always say, you get three options. You get price, time, and convenience, and you get to pick two. What do you want?
Yep.
And so if
Yep.
someone's picking price and time, that's a cash wholesale offer because they want to get the
Yeah.
money quick. So
Yep.
the biggest one that wouldn't be innovation is somebody that's in a super hurry. Because innovation is, you can go on to whatever, website and kind of see what average market time is. But
Yeah.
I would say it's about, you know, for me, about 45 days. Because it's like
Yeah.
if you can price it aggressive and accordingly, you can move them pretty quick. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, sometimes you get in these rural markets and there's not a lot of buyers. I
Yeah.
always tell people, obviously when you're doing a wholesale, you're doing, your 15-day, 30-day close. And then
Yep.
on novations, I always like to do 60 to 90-day closes. But I always tell Mr. Seller, I'm trying to get this done as soon as I can, but I want to set those expectations up front saying it might take a little bit long. But then I told that one guy that we did the deal in Harrington, I was like, he haggled me down to 60 days. I'm like, all right, let's get it done in 60 days. I called him that following Monday after they waived inspection. I'm like, hey, you ready to sign on Friday? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's already sold. He's like, no way. And so,
Yeah.
you know,
So why didn't that guy put the deal on MLS himself?
and that's the big thing. It's like, and I always ask that. That's one of my questions when I'm talking to sellers. I'm like, dude, this sounds like a nice place. Why don't you list it? Oh, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to pay this. And it's like, okay, technically they kind of are, but it's you're paying it out of your end. So it's like, okay, well, how about I do this? I'm going to take all that pain as far as kind of like, dealing with the appraisers, the inspections, the realtors. I'll
All
take
that.
on
Yeah.
all that. I'll pay all the commissions. I'm going to take care of all that. And then they're like, okay, cool. Because it's kind of like, it's you're taking, I always explain it, you're taking a wholesale deal and you're putting it on the market. That's what you're doing on these. And so some of them are nice, semi-dated houses. Some of them are, I mean, I've done wholesale, I've done Novation land deals. I've done a Novation commercial deal. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like there's a pain point why they don't want to list. But you got to get that out of the way at the beginning. Like, why don't you just list this property yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so so that's I think the biggest thing between being a non-novation is the time frame. You just got to
Yeah.
allow the time. I would say time and reasonable access because you're gonna need access to the
Yeah.
property.
Correct.
Sense of
Yeah.
like, you tell the seller, hey, at this price, I'm not your buyer. An
Yeah.
investor's not going to be, your buyer, but we're going to take it to and bring, help bring in a third party buyer that will pay that price. In return, I'm going to need, access to the house. If it's owner occupied, I always tell them, when are some good times during the week? I don't just send everybody. My agents
Yeah.
really screen the people. So we're only,
Yeah.
and I do appointment only. But if it's like vacant, like the one in Harrington, it's like, well, we
Yeah.
didn't even have time to put a sign in the yard. But, I'd
Yeah.
say lockbox sign in the yard, have at it. If it's an
Yeah.
owner occupied, tenant occupied, I always say, I don't do lockbox, appointment only, and then I don't do a sign just for because I want to keep it stress free, hassle free.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so but again, that's just me. There's a lot of people that do it differently, but for me, that's where I kind of have my success.
No, I appreciate that. You've added tons of value, I think, to a lot of people who are going to be able to see this. So tell me how everyone can get in touch with you, Jeff.
Well, I'll provide you my contact information and
Okay.
just a
Yep.
cell phone, email, text.
Okay.
I'd love to, even if it's just getting a separate set of eyes on a property, because a lot of the
Yep.
times you can go and look at a deal and then, I'm working with another guy down in Texas and we started working about 3 weeks ago and he hasn't done any additional marketing. We've already got 3 deals, 3 novations listed under contract.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so it was deals already in his CRM. He
Yep.
just wasn't really looking at, he was looking at that cash tunnel vision. His blinders
Yeah.
were on. So
Correct.
now it kind of opens it up like, okay,
So
you
did you
hit,
guys just go through that list, or did
yeah,
he
I
already
was like,
know that
Chris,
they
I,
wanted
I
cash
did
offers
Chris,
and
and I
those
go,
are the
Chris,
ones that he would
here's what I'm
resort
going
to?
to challenge. I go, we talked on a Friday. I was like, I want you this weekend to go through your CRM, find 5 to 10 leads of like deals that like you really built good rapport with. They were, but they just, you couldn't get them on the cash deal, but they wanted to sell. And so he
Yeah.
came up with a list of like 10. And so far we got 3 going and we got 2 more on the way. And so he's not doing any additional marketing, or
Yeah.
he's not targeting. People are like, well, who are you marketing towards novations? And I'm like, I'm doing the novations for the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm not changing my marketing. I'm just adding that tool to the belt. And then,
Okay.
I'm doing novations on pre-foreclosures, on
Yeah.
probate houses, on inherited
Yeah.
homes, on
Just as
vacant
long
homes.
as you get the time, you're good.
Exactly, exactly. And that's great on that. And so it's like, in as long as you have the time to be able to do that, set those clear expectations up front and just have all the knowledge. Because the biggest thing too, Curtis, is like having all the
Hold on
all the
one quick
paperwork in
second.
line.
Let me. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, but that I think that's super cool, right? I think that adds tons of value too, because I think a lot of people, everybody always has stuff in their CRM that they haven't went through, that they think they may be able to go through, and like you said, people that they built rapport with, people that wanted above what a wholesaler could put an offer in on them for, and maybe they didn't want creative, and these are prime deals that are novation specific deals. So once again, I appreciate your time. Look forward to talking to you soon, and I'll check in with you probably later today. Thanks.
All right, I appreciate it.
All
Thanks.
right,
Thanks for
have a
having me.
good
Have
one.
a great rest of your
All
day.
right, thank you.
See you, bud.